Welcome to the Seattle Angel Conference Workshop Series. Today we're talking about teams with Iwein. Iwein, you want to introduce yourself and let us know or head on into your conversation?
Yeah, I'll put up the slides in a bit, but I'm Iwein Fuld, founder of squads.com. Squads is a community of teams, software development teams, growth teams, and we build a lot of startups. My background is in physics, and I sort of flunked into software development and then became a manager eventually. So it was all downhill, my career. But I've built a lot of teams along the way, and I'm very excited to talk about that. I'll put up my presentation so we can have a look at that. You should be able to see the screen now, and once I start
looks good.
the presentation, you should still be able to see it. Is that correct?
Yep, looks good.
Good. So this presentation it's a little bit of a marketing title, Team Building Mastery. It's very hard to be a master of team building because it's a very complex field. There's a lot of research into team building, but it would be very arrogant to consider ourselves masters of team building. It's a very complicated and volatile field, lots of different things in there. So during this presentation, you might hear some things from me that you violently disagree with. And I would recommend that you do this not in silence, but actually go into that conflict, and we will figure out how to resolve it. We can learn a lot from each other, and I will try to engage you also actively in that. We have at Squads more than 10 years of experience building teams, keeping teams together, delivering at high velocity for startups and scale-ups in very interesting scenarios. So we've learned a lot. And before that, I've already done team building for different organizations for another 10 years. So I think I know a little bit about it. I know enough to be scared, and that makes you an expert. Huh? That said, a little bit about Squads. Squads was established in 2013, so a decade ago. We do teams on demand. So we keep the teams together, and we feed work into those teams from our customers. And this is a very different approach from typical outsourcing companies that just send people over to the customer and make the team building their problem. Excuse me. We have long-lasting partnerships. So typically Squads people are with our customers longer than their employees stay. The community is quite healthy, very diverse, spread all over the globe, doing lots of different interesting projects. We have a very diverse skill set as well. So Pavel, for example, has a team of growth people that can do everything from design to content to social media management to data analysis, automation, AI on the growth side. But we can also do infrastructure automation, test automation, automated acceptance testing, all that sort of things. And we can build the actual software. So lots of different people with very different viewpoints collaborating together to do good business. We also allow our customers to change budgets during the work. So this is a very interesting dynamic for a team. If you don't get a guaranteed fixed monthly fee for the team, you have to resolve very interesting challenges also on the staffing and budgeting side. We've solved that as well, and that makes for interesting learning on the team side too. So what I'm going to do in this workshop, or what we are going to do, is we're going to look into teams for like the team building, the meat of the theory of the content for about 20 to 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer because I have some interesting background as well. Then we're going to try and do a practical exercise of at least 30 minutes. I actually made up 2 labs. One is a short one, and the second one is a little bit longer. Then we'll go into a couple of deep dives and some feedbacks and learning. So I'll try to really activate all of you into this exercise. And if it turns out that this is not something you really want to spend a lot of time on, I have plenty of content to fill up the 2 hours. So don't worry about that. But and at the end, we'll have a Q&A. But don't plan to go to sleep during the workshop. So first of all, what is a team? People have very different concepts of what a team is. Most people know what a sports team is, but in lots of companies, people talk about the team and they actually mean the whole organization or some decision makers at the top that really don't operate as a team the way I see it. So I think it's important to have a somewhat strict definition of a team. And the simplest one I could come up with is that it must be multiple people. Obviously, you cannot have a team of one. Those multiple people must have a shared goal, because without a shared goal, you cannot collaborate. And they should actually be collaborating together. So if multiple people share a goal, like a CEO, a CFO, and a CMO in a large corporation, they might have meetings together, but they're not actually collaborating together. They're just heading their different units. And there's lots of pyramidal hierarchical organizations where at the top, there's very little teamwork going on. And it can also happen at the bottom that people, for example, if you're building a railroad or you're doing a mining operation, people are just doing the work, but they're not actually collaborating a lot. So that I would also not call a team. And lots of managers will use the word team for almost everything. And in this conversation, I hope we will not. How big is a team? Typically, what we say at Squads is that a team should be between 2 and 10 people, so 3 to 9. It must be at least 2, obviously, otherwise it's not a team of multiple people. And the reason we don't want more than 9 people is that at a higher number of people, when you do complex collaborative work, people get to hide behind others. And this is not to say that they're malicious or anything. It's just that if you're in a situation where you don't get the help you need and somebody else is solving your problem, in a larger team, this can be invisible. I would say that the biggest team that can function is about 20 people. So in some sports, for example, you have 18 people on the team. And in some situations where you need a lot of redundancy, the most horrible one I can think of is the military. There you also see larger teams working well. And lots of research has been done into that. Typically for the easier tasks, larger teams work better. And for the more complex tasks, smaller teams work better. So for highly complex tasks, often the team size, optimal team size, goes down to 3. And in different research, you see different outcomes, and that always is dependent on the context. So this is a very particular, probably well-known graph of team building. It's already there since the 1960s. Tuckman came up with it in 65. And it is about the phases of team forming. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on each of the phases. But the idea is that when you form a team, it takes some time, of course, to do the recruitment, to get the people together, and to make sure that they actually know each other and they have some way of collaborating. And after that is done and the actual work starts to happen, the initial conflicts come out of the work. So if you think you're capable of collaborating well with someone, then the actual collaboration often is the proof of the pudding, right? It could happen that interpersonal conflicts happen, or differences in skill set cause friction. People don't know who to ask, put pressure on each other. This is called the storming phase. So typically in the beginning of the team evolution, productivity first goes down, like the newness of the whole thing wears off a little bit, and then people get tired or tired of each other, and these things need to be resolved. And after that phase, people come up with a more solid process of improving the team internally. This is called the norming phase. And then the effectiveness of the team goes up again. At the end, it sort of flattens out at an optimal level, and we call that a performing team. Sometimes in the literature, this is also called a hyper-productive team. because strangely enough, the time span between the forming of the team and the actual performing phase, the maximum performing phase, the hyperproductivity, is usually longer than a duration of a typical project. So what people do often is at the end of a project, they disband the team. We'll get to that later. That's a bad idea. Then forming a team, the first phase, what's essential at the beginning, and often people forget this, is that a team needs a goal. They need some work to do. And if you just build the team as sort of an engine to do work, then it is a waste, obviously. But I've seen it happen in larger organizations anyway. So to set the goals, this is a kind of delicate process. You need to set them, but not be too precise, because if the team itself does not commit to the goals, they will constantly delegate the responsibility back to the person that set them. And this is a pitfall I stepped in too many times, to be honest. And I would really recommend to refine the goals with the team during the formation and storming phases. Then you invite the initial team members to start the team, and you really ask them to commit, to consent to this goal, and to build the team with your help instead of just pushing people together. Then you ask them what they need. So you can set some boundaries to for example, budget boundaries, or the size of the office, or the spendings on the tools, or something like that. But you cannot dictate their output. What happens a lot is that the deadline is already set, the entire scope is already set, and then people start building a team. That team will never commit to actually reaching the goal because they did not consent to being responsible for it. It's a very important part. Then you allow the team to recruit their own members. And this is something that most of our customers usually push back at. Most of the founders we speak with push back at that because they want to control the recruitment. But I think that if a team is allowed to be the driving force of the recruitment, they will also commit to training the new members, for example. If you just push someone into a team, it always goes bad, almost always. And then you allow them to use their own tools. So don't standardize. So very hands-off approach. Maybe you are starting to find out I'm somewhat of an anarchist. Storming. It's very tempting to see a team just started with maybe an ambitious goal and strict timeline constraints due to the market. If they struggle in the beginning, to jump in and help. Don't do it. Just let them. I mean, you can offer help if it's requested, but you cannot intervene with help. That's very important. Otherwise, the team will not learn and they will not go into the norming phase. So you focus on the goals, measure, quantify, give feedback, leave the team to learn from their mistakes. So don't have them rely on external intervention. Just be there to ask questions like, what can we learn from this? How can we do it the next time? That sort of thing is okay, but let them be autonomous in that learning process. That's important. And support. It's very important that they feel they have the support they need to get through it. Because if the team gives up during the storming phase, or key members of the team give up, then they also don't get through it. You would be surprised at how many teams actually stay in the storming phase or just fail there eventually. Can take a very long time. I usually see like 6 weeks to 6 months, and without the right coaching or the right people on board that have done it before, the 6 months is way more likely. Then the norming phase is basically, you see that happening at some point. Stress levels go down, members start to make requests and demands, say, okay, we need this to reach our goal, we need another person with this skill set, schedule us some interviews. They set some internal boundaries. So they can decide to use different tool sets in a software team, for example, they also start to talk about some things that seem mundane, like coding standards, white space in the code, that sort of stuff. But these conversations become more constructive and better documented. That's the norming phase. So one of the most awesome signs, I think, in the norming is when the team stops taking orders. So it's a very bad idea, in my opinion, to give orders to a team. It's a command and control style behavior, which I don't like, and I think it impedes creativity. But if you try, like once in a while, just what happens if you give them an order, if the team or some team members just run to do what the external person with some authority says, they are not in the norming phase yet, because in the norming phase, they will hold their environment also responsible to stick with the rules. So suggestions of changes, goals, quantification, and measurement, they come from the team, and you can give them to the team. This is like a healthy conversation in the norming phase. In the performing phase, I mean, I can talk through some signs, but you'll know. Like the team that performs, that's the one that you will be likely to want to give all the work to. They're always done before you expect them to be. Feels healthy, fun, creative environment. So I've just added some pictures of people that happen to be in a performing team at the time. It has nothing to do with software or startups, this thing. So here's some random people from Iwein in 2002 at the end of some project proposal they wrote. You see on the picture, like the facial expressions, the body language, everything says this team is doing well. They're just happy doing their work, and they're collaborating well. Like the way they sit together tells you a good thing. And here you see, like even from the back, these kids just completed something on a hike, an interesting puzzle. And you see from their body language and the way they're talking to each other that they're doing well. They're a performing team. And even you can see it on the individual level. There's like small signs in facial expressions that we can talk about for hours, but human psyche is very good at just detecting that. So you'll just feel it. And once the team is performing and the project is done, they've reached their goal or one of their goals, that team is your asset, right? So you don't want to kill that team. What we do at Squads is we feed projects to teams. So if we have a project, we're going to shop around and see, is there a team that can take on this project, an existing team? And that's also the way we keep the teams together, because we can line up these projects for the teams to make sure that they're always booked and the best teams get the best projects. So there's sort of an evolution in the team ecosystem so that the best teams have the most success, and also the best projects are the most successful that way. You also want to give, obviously, your mission critical projects to the best teams. Sometimes it's tempting to create like a stellar team for this important project and then recruit them together, basically undermining the existing teams by taking the best people out. And that kind of behavior, in my opinion, is toxic to a healthy team environment. Because if a team is already performing well and they have this hyperproductivity flow state vibe to them, if you give them a very challenging project, some mission critical thing that cannot fail, they will not be stressed about it because they know they have the tools to solve this problem. So it's very good also for the organization to keep those teams there. These critical projects are more fun for the performing teams, and might actually be scary for newly constructed teams because they are still in this storming phase, and it just adds more stress for them. So a couple of success stories that we've applied this to at Squads. One of our first customers was Van der Bron. We met them when they were still trying to score an investment, put one of, our best team on that project, first scored the investment with them, then built the initial MVP, and eventually they exited. And one of the founders is still with us, doing another energy company in Singapore right now. Stack State is a completely different beast, but we did a similar thing. Put a front end team on there for them because they had a good back end team already in house, and they were doing infrastructure automation. We had also an infrastructure team there at some point, which helped them to scale up. I think they've also exited at the moment. I won't go through all of them because I want to get into the lab with you, but basically all these companies have their own story, and we have helped them with the teams at Squads. And on this picture with 10 success stories right here, all of these were built by a total of 3 teams. So I want to get into some practical stuff and see what you remember of what I've been saying, and then get some interaction going. At the end, we'll do at least a 10-minute Q&A. So you get, if there's a question you want to ask and you don't get to ask it along the way, please write it down and we'll use it there. But if during the conversation you have questions and you want to go into them right now or in a bit, don't hesitate to raise your hand, and John will stop me and we can go into it.
We have a couple of questions popping up in the chat, but we can pick them up when you like.
Yeah, so what I would like to do is first explain the first lab that I want to do. We're with a relatively small group, so I think we can sort this out. And I would like to give you the curveball of, without any further instructions, suggest that you form teams. In the meantime, I'll look at the questions in the chat and see if I can sort them out with ones that are more relevant to answer now. And
would it work if I create some breakout rooms and let people move around to the breakout rooms?
I'm not against that, but I would like to, I think we have 10 people in the call now, right?
Yep.
So I think we wait with the breakout rooms until it gets messy and one of the teams requests a breakout room. How about that?
Well, I'm wondering what your mechanism of communicating is that you're thinking of.
Well, I'm first going to throw this curveball. I mean, if teams should be free to choose their own tools,
okay.
But you can challenge me on this one. That's actually what I expect. But I'll just give it like 2 or 3 minutes for people to figure out how to do that challenge. So form a couple of teams, please.
Okay, I'm going to intercede, and I'm going to open some breakout rooms so people can jump around if they want.
Yeah, perfect.
And let me remove your spotlight so people can see each other. So go form teams.
Looks like both Noel and I are ready to jump on a team if someone volunteers to lead. I'll volunteer to lead. Who wants to be on my team? We're going to do amazing, cool stuff. We don't even know what it is yet.
I do. I want to be on your team.
Thanks, Noel. We got 2 people on this team.
All right, I'm on. Let's do it.
All right, Nathan. All right. Got 3 people on the team. Anybody need to know more about what we're going to do first? We'll have to figure that out.
Priscilla raised her hand.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be
Priscilla.
interesting if we could introduce each other a little bit and see if we can get teams with different skills together, you know,
Skills might
so
be
that we
useful, yeah.
somehow can complement each other in whatever we should
You don't
do.
even know what the goal of the team
Yeah.
is, so it makes life miserable, right?
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things.
still,
The definition of a team included a couple things, and I don't have the slides in front of me, but there was a slide. It was like the first or second slide.
More than one
Yeah, so we got that
has a goal,
goal. We don't have that.
and you have to collaborate towards that goal.
Got it. Okay.
Priscilla, you raised your hand. Did you want to say something? You're on mute.
Priscilla, it looks like you're talking to us, but you're still muted.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, I'll just go wherever. I'm from like the tech and entertainment industry, so whatever that is helpful towards.
Yeah. Tayo is a Gemini.
The current goal is to form teams.
I'll join you, Priscilla. I mean, we should have
Oh,
at
okay.
least 2 teams. So we
Okay.
have the Noel,
Sure.
Tim, and I think there was one other person on team 1. We can start team 2.
No, I hear you. So team 1, our goal, it sounds like, is to form a team. That seems pretty straightforward. But maybe not. So and I don't remember who all was on team 1. I got myself and Noel and um Tayo and Priscilla originally, but it sounds like you all are separating out, and Nathan.
Yeah,
So
we've
I'm
gone
gonna write
rogue.
this down. Yeah. That's okay.
So
Who else is on
that's
team
really
1?
cool. What's happening is really cool because you see, I gave you guys a challenge that is completely unsolvable, right? I just say form teams, and you guys get to it and get some useful work done in like 3 minutes, right?
So-
Because now you have understood who is willing to jump on a team. You have a couple of skill sets lined up, and people sort of start to get the picture of, okay, what do we have to work with? So this is a perfect illustration of how awesome people are, right? You give them a challenge that at face value, you'd say you're not even able to start. And 3 people have pointed out the 3 issues with the challenge, and you've already prepared yourself for once those answers come in, like in a few minutes. If I was a manager and I would have planned this whole thing out, I would have screwed it up completely. You see the difference?
So if we were at a startup weekend and I was facilitating a startup weekend, which I've done many, many times, we would have done this mushy thing in the room where people could visit each other and talk to each other. But we would already have goals essentially defined, right? Form a team to make a business, to make that idea go. And there's people waving flags with their business idea, right?
Yeah.
So that mingling has a different flavor than this mingling.
Yeah, so I wanted to see, this is really, I abused you for a human experiment, but I wanted to see what happens if you ask people to form teams without any kind of instruction or goal. And it already works, so I'm totally amazed, to be honest. What I would like to do is introduce you to the goal, then answer the questions in the chat, because there's not too many, and then we can get a little bit of a break. You have sort of an idea of what the teams are going to be already, right? And then, so I'll introduce you to the goal, then answer the questions, and then we finish the forming of the teams based on those goals, because it's a much more sensible thing, as people already pointed out. Yeah. Let me see where I put that. I did something to my views, which is not conducive. All right. I had some problem with my techie thing. So first of all, I have the overarching goal. Pavel did a really cool thing in his previous webinar where he created a white paper before the webinar. I was too lazy to do that, so I decided that I would do the white paper with you guys, and it's going to be about teams. So after doing this white paper, it will not be completely finished. We'll finish it up. That's fine, but you will always have access to it, and you can list yourself as an author if you want. So here's a link to the document, which is a very basic idea of what the white paper probably is going to look like. And the teams are going to work on this white paper. And I have also a couple of ideas on how this should go, but that is up to the teams, because I want to follow my own principle of not being too specific on the goals in a directive way. So while you guys have a quick look at that document, let's select a question for me to answer from the chat. Will you help me with that, John, or should I just pick one at random?
Just pick whichever one. There's only like 3, so.
Okay. I will pick the one about storming. I think that's a very important question, difficult one as well, by Tim. So the question is, during the storming, does the removal of a problematic team member count as intervention? It's always difficult, right, to let go of people. It's much harder than to get them on board. I think, yes, it counts as an intervention. So if somebody needs to go from the team, that should be a team decision. And what I always do when I coach teams in the forming and storming phases, I explain to them that you cannot be a good team without a procedure or a way of removing members that are not meeting the team standards. So it should be a practice of every team to assess which members are happy to be in the team and which members the team is happy to have on board. I have a deep dive later on about sociocracy that deals with this in some way that I like. We can talk a little bit more about that then, but to strictly answer the question, yes, if the outsider decides that somebody's removed from the team, that's an intervention.
So what about the relationships between teams and between other parts of the organization?
Yeah, I've also created a deep dive on that. So do you want to dive into that in relation to this previous question, or is it a separate question in your mind, John?
No, I think it's the one of the sharp edges in that conversation, right? Who the intervener is, right? Because I have a conflict the other direction. You're doing this, we'll call anarchistic structure of things, of defining. Sorry, I'm having a call right in the middle as always. You're doing this. Let's do a team and let's make it go. And we have this ongoing problem in startups that we have lovely teams that really like to be experts who prioritize value, as you did at the beginning, of doers of code are better than managers of code. And there's this value chain in the structure of the world. And it turns out that things like marketing and management are fundamental priorities in order to accomplish the goal of having a business that's profitable and effective. And we build all sorts of debt into the world on the basis of that sociological prioritization, right? Mechanical engineers are better than software engineers. Electrical engineers are better than mechanical engineers. And there's this hierarchy in the world of value. And marketing is way over there on the other side of the building because we don't care about them, and managers are just a pain in the ass. That was a common conversation at the big company that I worked at, right? And you reflected that. So when a team forms and it builds its culture, and its culture defines values which lead to prioritization, how do you turn that into things that are successful in the global space rather than in the technical space of writing the code? Because the thing that makes writing good code versus what makes a good business are like never in alignment all the way.
Yeah, so we have this kind of struggle with many customers because it's hard. So first, to relate it to the previous question, is that a whole business has an overarching goal, right? They have a mission and they have some idea of how to achieve that mission or work on that mission, and there's goals defined. And some teams contribute more to those goals than others, and it is hard, but usually possible, to get at least a feel or an estimation of how much a team contributes to that goal. And if you know basically the business value of a team. So this is an exercise that needs to happen outside of the team, because the team gets set boundaries, and one of the boundaries is budget. So if you know that a team is not contributing as much to a certain goal as another team, and this goal is top of your list to meet your market demands, you will take budget from the one team and move it to the other.
We call this a corporate antibody. Right, that action is the middle manager corporate antibody, taking budget away from those wasteful things, putting them into important things. And this is exactly what kills R&D and creativity in big businesses. Which is why we need to build innovation colonies, which are isolated with barriers away from the middle manager antibodies. Because
but what if the middle manager doesn't get to make the decision, but the marketing team or the innovation team does?
Well, so somewhere above them is a manager of the budget across everything, right? And so how you manage the budget matters, and we can argue about that part. But the typical answer is, am I doing something that will produce cash now, or am I going to produce something that builds possibility of different kinds of cash later? And that conflict always has a dynamic tension. And so the creatives off doing the R&D work on things that don't produce cash the way that if I just optimize the production line a little bit better, I would get more cash, right? And so there's this tension in the budgets, which gets typically fought out in the middle managers, right?
Yeah, but that assumes that all the value is calculated in short-term profit.
Well,
right?
I mean, that's the one that ends up being dominant, because when you run out of short-term profit, you end up killing the company. And so every time there's, when there's abundance, then we can do R&D, and when there's constraint, then we kill off all of the R&D stuff because we have to eat, right? And so there's a whole dynamic there as well. So who manages the budget matters.
Definitely true.
And who gets to choose priority about whether I'm optimizing for creativity or, just the craftsman programmer versus the lean programmer that builds the smallest thing that will solve the problem, right? The duct tape programmer is really a valuable person in certain kinds of contexts, which is different than the craftsman that builds the perfect thing that's going to be technical debt free, right?
I totally agree. But I think I always will be able to estimate, quantify the risk of having the duct tape code, and quantify the opportunity of having the duct tape code earlier. So at some point, these two things need to be balanced. It will be an estimation, but we see that a production issue with 100 high-value customers will cause a certain cost, and we can make it a goal for a certain team to reduce that risk and measure it. So I think that setting these goals in a very smart way and quantifying them in a very smart way become more and more important in larger organizations. But I also think we've veered off the topic of teams, because I think visionaries in the organization, which might also be in teams, need to set those goals in a very smart way and measure them and make sure that the feedback is correct. Because if the measurement is just the monthly profit, you're going to have a shit company for sure.
Yeah. So that, a counter example to your discussion is a group called the Madison Avenue Collective. And they are a group of, I don't know, 15 or 20 people who are individual gig worker type people doing things, a programmer here, a database person there, a project manager there. And then they go out and search for projects, and then they dynamically form teams for that project that lives as long as the project has to happen. And if that person can't do it, then maybe there's two database people and they pick one instead of the other, right? But they form a team, do the project, and then dissipate, sort of like slime molds, right? When they have a big pile of food, they all team up into a big thing. And when there's not, then they spread out, right? So
Would you call those 15 people a team?
in a
guys,
sense,
just
they're a meta
if I
level.
can
Yeah, please.
interrupt a
Sure,
little
sure,
bit.
Joe.
So I'm a little bit lost as to the direction now. I thought we were going to split into teams to discuss the topics.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or do we
you're
follow your
totally-
discussion or
I was actually,
yeah. But
actually
by the way, it's a
tempted to-
relevant discussion for sure. And sometimes it's in the origin, in my view, of poorly formed teams because of the politics in the above levels of the organization and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, so how would
there's this
would we
thing
proceed?
called the chat, which I think we have used poorly in this team formation thing. That would be a good thing. I've seen two team leaders stand up, and I've seen a bunch of
Yep.
people quietly waiting for something to happen. So
Yeah, we've
what's the
taken
next
I
a
step,
little
volunteer
bit.
Joe?
myself as PM. That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Joe. I think we've taken a little bit too long in this discussion. I got carried away a bit. Thank you for intervening there.
It happens.
So I wanted to answer a few questions from the chat, and I think we've spent enough time on that for the team formation. The overarching goal is clear. I will try to shut up now and give the people that have identified as team spokespeople or team leaders the opportunity to ask questions or suggest.
So let's be clear about who the team leaders are.
Exactly. Can the team leaders raise hand?
I can volunteer myself.
I was with Tim Johns.
I see there are three hands that went up: Tayo, Tim, and Joe. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
So being an organizer type, I would say put your name into the chat and who your team members are, but I'm trying to keep my mouth shut about how to do this thing because I would organize the hell out of it.
Yeah, given the time, I think the best way is to follow your lead there, John, because we need to identify the teams quickly.
So Tayo, Priscilla, and who's the other people in Tayo and Priscilla's team? Tim's team? So who's unbound? Nathan is bound. Daraja is not in a team.
We'll take any stragglers.
Yeah,
John?
we're both
Well,
INFJs apparently,
Yeah,
so
we'll adopt you if you.
we're very friendly.
Okay,
So-
so can each team please pick a symbol, smiley or a letter, and everybody puts that in front of their name with a space, so we have the overview.
If you just use the reactions, you can just do it real quick, right? Assuming I can find the reactions.
Yeah, but those don't stay up.
So Nathan picked the rocket. So Tim's team, everyone on Tim's team, let's use a rocket. Now I have to figure out how to do that.
I put it in the chat so you can copy paste.
Ah, there we go. Perfect. Thank you.
So there's a star for Joe's team.
Maybe we can identify what would be the topic of each team. Do we separate them? How do you want to organize that? We don't do all streams the same topics, right?
Yeah, so I'm trying to create a little bit of confusion here. I have an answer written down to this question to split up the goals, and then teams can pick a goal. But if you come up with the split together, so that's a very interesting thing to happen, but maybe John and I took a little bit too much time on the discussion. So let's try that for 3 minutes, see if it goes anywhere. And then I just directly set the goals if it doesn't work. So I'll shut up for 3 minutes, and let's do the people that have assigned themselves team leaders, quick conversation on divide and conquer of the work.
Are the team leaders also allowed to speak, or?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. It's the rules of the game. In my proposal, at least in our discussion, would be to go on the topic that where I asked also the question on the how to recognize that the team is under too much stress when you have too little budget or confusing management directives, etc. How to make the case that you either need more time or that you need the team for the team to work well, that you need different conditions. So how can the team react to this somewhat hostile environment, which is very common in corporations?
So just to repeat that and see if I understood, your suggestion is that your team focus on this one topic and produces a bit of text to...
Yeah, can be, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I understand, no objections.
No, I'm not sure I understood that. That was a proposal that the entire group here focus on that one question?
No, just for whoever would like to sit with me. Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay. Any Rocket team folks have a proposal on something we should grab from this white paper? I bet there's something exciting in there. I know there is for me, but I'm trying not to be that that guy. So
Be that guy.
nah. Let me give you guys a few minutes before I default to that guy.
Sorry, I'm a little confused what we're doing right now. Is there someone that could reiterate what like the current task is?
We're trying to define who the teams are and what project they're going to work on.
Okay.
That's the goal.
So I have put a document about the teams into the chat, so you can be a little bit more jointly organized if you want. I'm going to put everybody's name in there.
And the parameters for the project it's just come up with a question that everyone on the team is interested in?
Yeah, so we're getting to a point where it's very clear that this is a much harder problem than just splitting people up into groups, right? The overall goal that I had in mind, so I'm acting like a founder or customer in this case, say I want this whole white paper done, and I want to get smart people's input into this white paper. And now the teams are just, okay, what's my goal? And they're picking and choosing. And at the end of the line, this overarching goal will not be met. Right? So this is my time to intervene. I'm not going to intervene into the teams, but I'm going to say, okay, this organization is not going to head to reach the goal I see to meet this mission. So guys, we need to do a little bit better. And it's on me because I came up with this whole idea, right? So that's a point where it's perfectly fine for a founder or a leadership team or whomever makes the overarching decisions to intervene and set the teams on the right track. Right? This is how anarchy doesn't work. You cannot just let people play around. That's the illustration. So what I've done, and this was like obviously to be expected. I have put 5 goals in order of priority to get this, and I'll put that in the document that John just created. There. 5 goals that I think should be met in this order of priority, so that we get the farthest into the the goal of getting an awesome white paper out there that I could even learn something from. So I think that one thing is that we don't know is like, do the topics that I put in that white paper even cover what the community is interested in, right? We want to have a white paper that answers the questions that people like us have about these things. And I just made a few topics up. So we don't know if this list is complete. So I would like one team to focus on making sure that this list is complete. And that aligns pretty well with what Joe came up with. He already put forward one topic that was missing. But I think we need a team to focus on making sure that we have all topics that are missing. And this can be done by looking at the questions that are already in the chat, but it can also be done by doing a poll or asking around. So I would like that to be the focus of a team. Is that something one of the teams wants to pick up? I did a little nudge there already, if you noticed.
I see Priscilla raising her hand.
Hi, I just want to say, like, for my confusion, that, like, I understood that we were supposed to get split into 2 teams, and that we would select a goal and then pursue like discussion for that goal. I just didn't understand where those goals are. We were given a link and I don't see anything about like, hey, like topics or a list of topics or a list of goals. And so that's where I got confused. Oh, are we supposed to generate that then? Because I don't see where there's I guess the list. I was looking for a list. Hey, we're going to talk about these things, or you can choose from this list that we're going to talk about. And I think because there's no singular source of information, because now I'm hearing that there's like, hey, we can choose things from the chat too. I think that's where I was a little bit confused. Oh, okay. So
Good. Thank you, Priscilla. So my idea is that we have these goals. They can be done by one team sequentially, or they can be done by multiple teams in parallel, as long as they don't conflict or rely on each other too much. That's how I designed them. And the first thing we did was, let's see if we can figure out the goals on our own. That's a no. We need some leadership there. So this is the leadership I introduced after the 3 minutes.
okay.
Does that clear it up?
Yeah, I was looking at the previous document that was labeled as white paper for team building, so I didn't see
Yes.
that these ones.
That document, that is the starting point for this meta goal.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to throw everybody into like a white page.
Okay, thank you.
It's good that you asked the clarifying question, because it's very hard to facilitate this process because it's intentionally messy, but it should not be that confusing.
This is the place where I would be, you know, as a leader, setting up tools at the beginning that would facilitate the conversation, right? So having a place for tasks to be, having a place for, you know, the structure of the conversation to be bounded a little bit, right? And you're leaving it undefined, hoping that people will engage and fill in.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's a very big difference. And I hope this is also a big takeaway, because even though it doesn't go as efficiently as it would if I would have pre-cooked all this, everybody's thinking hard and pushing back and making decisions and taking initiative. So if you want a command and control like organization, that is very efficient in the beginning, but the teams don't evolve into units that know better than the leadership, then you want to prescribe everything. And this is like the complete opposite, which is harder at the beginning, but eventually pays off.
Yeah. Of course, in our case, we do miss kind of the step of team building because we haven't had the chance to really meet the other participants before. And we have already to start producing. So we have kind of a rushed
Isn't it always like that?
Yeah, which can, I'm just running along with the experiment. So, do we have already the people signed up for the teams? I don't have overview from my side. Shall we just say the team leaders go to the break rooms, to the breakout rooms, and see
Joe
who
is
there?
in room 3. He put on the chat.
Yeah. So
I closed the breakout rooms because they were in my way. I will add them back up now that you're saying you want to use them.
So the one thing I want to do before everybody leaves for the breakout rooms is I want the teams to commit to those goals, because now I've sort of made a list of goals, and you haven't said, okay, those are nice goals. We'll get the meta goal done like this. And normally in an organization, I would wait for the teams to really adopt those goals, preferably even edit them. I don't think we need to go into that because we've already spent enough time on this illustration, but at least I want to know which team takes which goals before they go into the breakout rooms, because the teams need to know of each other, who has which goal, right? That's a bit of coordination you need to do up front.
Yeah, these do appear a bit sequential, but they can be done in parallel. So I'm looking at this list and thinking that if there is a team that is, for instance, introducing the topics, the team that is filling the topics could be reading from that list and despite the fact we're in 2 different teams, the teams themselves could collaborate in that fashion. Otherwise, this looks a bit sequential. It would be difficult, I think. We're going to have to coordinate among the teams, I guess, in order to ensure that we're able to do this in a parallel fashion.
Yeah. So are we going to coordinate directly in the document by comments, or are we going to coordinate in this room here, talking, or are we going to coordinate in the document that John made, or pre-coordinate the whole thing? Those are the major options I see. You want me to make a suggestion?
It'd be better if someone on one of the teams made the suggestion, but I'll take a suggestion.
Yeah, so I think if we go into the breakout rooms, team star takes the. That was right, Joe. The team star wanted the first goal, or did I miss that?
Team star.
Yeah.
So yes, we will discuss the topics. We can do all the topics. I was just writing an alternative, which would be each team would take care of a topic, and then each team would also review the other team's result for sources, falsehoods, etc. I don't know if that introduces more chaos at this point, but that might give everybody a chance to actually discuss on the topics.
Yeah, I like that. Is that clear to everyone?
So just so I understand, we would pick a topic and a team would focus on that topic. So we'd have to find the topic first, like in this slightly larger group here.
From the questions that already been asked, for example.
Oh, I see. In the white paper itself. So for example, one of the topics would be the art of collaboration.
For example, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, at the risk of anchoring to that, why don't Rocket Team take the art of collaboration? Looks like John has set up a breakout room 1, and we will go in there and work directly in the document, right in the white paper document right there until it gets messy, and then we'll see if we need a new tool to break out. So I'm going to head to breakout room 1, and you'll see me typing in the white paper document itself.
Okay, cool. Let's reconvene here then in 15 minutes.
So then if I can put the topic 2 would be changing teams and increasing trust safety. And the topic 3 could be the stress on teams and how to defend the team and react to that in a constructive way.
So is each breakout room doing all of these goals for one topic instead of a horizontal approach then?
He's giving you the opportunity to choose.
Okay,
So
but if
what do you want to do is what he's saying.
I see.
Pick something and go.
Okay.
Now,
All right.
I think there's a work product, and I think there's a thing about organizing, and that's why there's 2 documents.
Okay. Okay.
So
Well,
if you go to the document team stock, then I put the 3 topics there.
So Team Rocket is in breakout room 1, I think, and Dirjaya, she was in breakout room 4, but I think she wants to join John in the breakout room.
Okay.
And the decision was made to focus on the topics because the people were more interested in diving into those topics for a bit than to work on the structure of the document, which is totally fine. I'll fix that later. Because otherwise, I mean, the goal is not to finish this white paper for real, right? That the goal is to learn from this process.
So everybody should be able to move from breakout room to breakout room. So there's no, no constraint. And it looks like she has moved to breakout room 1.
Yeah, I cannot see that, unfortunately, but
you should be able to click on participants and you should see the list of who's there.
Yeah, I just don't have the admin, like the host view of all the different breakout rooms, and we cannot share the host, I think. So it's that's a bit of a curveball for you, John.
You are now co-host.
Then I should be able to see that.
And I actually thought you could do that as an individual, so that's interesting.
Maybe
John, are you going to go into a breakout room?
I don't know how to do that. I'm not a
You
Zoom.
click on the 3 dots where it says more.
Yeah.
You should be able to see a breakout room button.
I don't see a breakout room button.
I'm going to move you to room 4. And then something should have popped up on your screen.
Yeah, it says room 4. I'm supposed to go to room 1.
Yeah, and now it changed to 1.
Okay. Then.
Click. Yes, Joe. You are on mute. Muted.
Sorry, I didn't find anybody on my breakout room.
Yeah,
so I just came
there's
back here.
2 of you. Yeah, you're the only one that's on your team at the moment.
Yeah.
No,
I can join another team.
I can join your team.
Yes.
There's
I see we have only 5 participants in Zoom. Does that mean only all the people, including breakout rooms, or excluding?
This is just the people that are not in breakout rooms.
Okay.
So I put you into breakout room 3. You can join Pavel, and Iwein can go into breakout room 3.
Exactly. And then
and I'll
John,
stick around here.
Yeah, and I would like to at most 10 minutes to get everybody back here, do a deep dive, because it's going to be a messy process. I don't want people to just be stuck there for the whole webinar.
Right, absolutely. I'm going to stop recording.
Too.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back from the breakout rooms. Ewan, did you discover anything?
All right.
So let's do a round of feedback first, and then I'll give my quick impression. So maybe the team leaders. Tim, you want to start?
Sure. So what's the context for the feedback? Just how we thought it went generally?
How did it feel? What were things that happened were unexpected? Like quick 30-second.
Yeah, I think from my perspective in particular, I was trying to scribe, and I think a little more comfort with the tools probably would have been good there. That might be a skill issue, and that kind of got in the way of achieving that flow state because we were trying to figure out how to do stuff. Which I guess could have actually facilitated some flow state too, because we were learning about who knows Google Docs and who's a Microsoft person and such as well. So that it turned into a bit of a team building exercise that didn't necessarily help us focus on the goals. And then we did manage to get a few of the we brainstormed a few topics. We probably could have spent hours on that, honestly. It was kind of fun. And then we had just at the end of the time we had just started filling in some of the content itself, which is several people did in fact comment that could I forget who said it. It might have been John Hand who said, I got to be careful not to read these or whatever because I'll go down that rat hole if we spend too much time reading the content. So yeah, so overall it was fun. It was a lot of time for the team to sort of really come together, but I thought given the time we had, like, I feel like I know Diraja, John, Nathan, although Nathan bailed on us earlier, and Noel, better than I did. So it's definitely a good thing. We could go do something now. Like we could finish this white paper. We need a couple hours at least.
I get that. Who's next?
I can go next.
Cool.
So Priscilla and I were working together in breakout room 2. We were trying to really orient ourselves in the task and ended up spending pretty much the entire time figuring out our direction. We were a bit unsure of how our work was fitting in with the larger picture. Because I think we had topic 2 based on the annotations in the project document, but it looked like there was already some text in that section. So we were first kind of trying to figure out that context there, and then the titles were all so loaded. We've got changing teams and increasing trust / safety, and then subtopic natural wear and repair of teams versus intervention. So trying to just unpack these really loaded headers took all of our time. So as Priscilla said, we were stuck a little bit in the storming phase of our team building. But I'm not sure if we were really storming with ourselves or storming with the goal, or if that's one and the same.
To add to that, so I think a lot of it was just us trying to figure out clarity. We weren't sure what topics were available. And then once we figured that out, then it was a lot of how do we execute this, because we understand the goals, but we started like trying to delegate. Okay, maybe one of us should tackle this part and the other person should tackle this part, but then also just having broad discussion to understand, like, what does this topic even mean? Like, what kind of answers do we think we're looking for? But ultimately we saw that we were like running out of time. So we decided to just make the best of it and be like, hey, so what do you do? And got to know each other and just accepted that the scope was too short for the execution. So that's, yeah.
And Joe, you want to give an impression on team, what was it, Star?
Yes. Well, we were only 3 people at some point too, so it was also easy to communicate. The struggle was the same to figure it out. I think in the beginning, as to who would like to this topic overall before becoming the team, to figure out what was our place in this and how to contribute. But once we were in the breakout room, I think it helped to have the documents that we could have a place for our output. And so I just gave a couple of ideas to start with the brainstorming and then to turn that into some recommendations. And I think from there, we just volunteered what we could and produced something that we could consider of value for the overall paper. So I think everybody had the 100% the commitment to contribute. The barrier was more indeed a little bit the anarchy in the beginning, figuring out how to contribute, and that's maybe I can see that this was an experiment, and I think it shows something. But of course, when we have such a limited time, it works better to distribute a specific subtask for each of the team, and to have a little bit more coordination in the beginning, and then people can get to being productive more quickly, because of course we have very limited time and we don't know each other before working together.
I understand. Thank you for that.
But it's very interesting as an experiment, for sure.
That was the point, right? It's
something.
We got very little done in the grand scheme of things, but we learned a lot about how teams form, and we can discuss that. So that was the goal, and I think I'm very impressed actually with how much happened in such a short time. Just for my personal curiosity, if you allow me, Diraja, sorry, you have a very different background to most of the people I heard. What was your impression? What happened in Team 1?
Yeah, so everyone in Team 1, we discussed on art of collaboration and what are different points that would make it up to art of collaboration. So we discussed on different points and how an effective team would look at it. Yeah.
And how was the team dynamic in your experience?
Yeah, I think it was great. Everybody contributed to some aspect of it, and the points discussed were meaningful, and it made a lot of sense. So
yeah, that's really cool that, like, as a cloud engineer, you joined a team of people. I don't think you guys have met before, right?
no, this is my first, so I just wanted to get some new ideas on how this forum would go. So
yeah, and so what I saw from the edits and like my 5 seconds in the Team 1, I really saw like a team working in sort of a flow state towards a random goal I set, and I was super impressed by that. And one last question to everyone. Raise your hand if you want to answer it. Did any conflict happen, like between people?
not from team one.
No, that's like too short for that to happen. But that would really have surprised me. Like if you guys managed to pick a fight in the first 10 minutes of working together, but that would have been something to put on the wall. Sorry.
You never know. People in Seattle can do that for sure.
Yeah, I know a couple of people that could do that, but it's quite rare. So
I didn't pick a fight, but I'd like to do one right now. No, I'm just kidding.
good. Let me pull
So
up.
I think there's a specific point that you're trying to walk us to, and I want to get us to say it out loud because there's clear discomfort in the group around not being told what to do at some level, right? And so there's a reason that you're doing that, and you have a thesis about that. Will we get to that?
Right now, actually, I'm trying to share my screen and get you guys out of this discomfort because I've tormented you enough. Let me do a deep dive and share I'll just share my entire desktop. That's easiest. And the deep dive I want to do is around the life cycle of a team. Because after this experience, I think this will land much better. Making a team is not something you can just design and do, right? It's very important to focus on allowing the people to experience this discomfort of forming the team and taking their own initiative. Because even though I felt I was a little bit worried that the experiment was too harsh, and there was too much chaos, the team that I tried to intervene and coordinate with did not as well as the team that went completely on their own. So if you give people, like some people take initiative quite quickly, like John, our facilitator, created this document to coordinate the whole thing. Tim stepped up as a team leader and they're like sort of eager to lead people. And there's people that take a little bit longer and then become actually quite good leaders or quite good team contributors. And if you give the time for people to do that, you get better teams and better results. So less intervention pays off. We already saw that in half an hour of experimentation. A typical, I just need to fix the controls here. This 1965 model of forming teams was really focused on project teams. And what I want to focus on with this group now is that I think that project teams are a waste, like I mentioned before. If you build a team around a project and then disband it just after the project and really let the people go, this is very wasteful. If you have a team that does multiple projects and you reorganize the team internally, like the 15 people that John mentioned in the example, that is okay, I think, but you want to keep the people on board. And the way I would like to do that most is to think of this storming, norming, performing thing as an iterative process. A team can go into norming to performing and then sort of stabilize. But if you give them new challenges, or the team gives itself new challenges, they can go back to norming in a healthy team. And it is also okay if sometimes they make a mistake and go back to the storming phase, lose a member to something, get faced with a horrible management or whatever, and they have to sort of reinvent themselves. But I really would like you to take away from this that iterating on these three middle steps is very important. And I looked at the different articles and documentation around that, and I see like very poor representation of this iterative approach in the documentation of this. So please remember it, that teams are valuable. Keep them. There's still a few questions open. I don't have them top of mind because I was a little distracted during this whole experiment. Do we want to raise a question related to this forming, storming, norming, performing thing that hasn't been answered yet, then I would like to take it now.
So the place where I see the most random team formation is in startup weekends. Have you participated in startup weekends?
Several times. I've been a mentor as well. It's a very interesting environment. I don't think many successful startups come from it, but it's cool to do.
Actually, not only have they come from, I have attended, participated, organized, or facilitated 76 startup weekends. So not only do they have companies that came from it, we have companies that have been funded through our program, the Seattle Angel Conference program, that went through, started in a startup weekend and then got through our program and got funded. And we have an investor that started as a startup weekend, ran his business, came through our program, didn't get funded, got funded by someone else, and succeeded and sold his company and came in to our program as an investor. So the whole journey, right? So given that there were 1,500 of those a year for a while, I suspect there's, beyond dozens of active companies that are still functional that came out of.
Don't get me wrong. I think that it's awesome, Startup Weekend. It could also be that the success rate in the US is higher than in Europe, but I've been in several Western European Startup Weekends and in Eastern European ones, and I think the success rate compared to how many ideas there are and how many turn into successful companies is not that high, but I also think that's not the point.
Yeah, but the formation in that first 2 hours, we give them a little box that's a little more constrained, and we can get random groups of people to actually perform and do a full, in a weekend, do a full man month of work, right? And
yeah, it's amazing.
When people are willing to switch their brain just a little bit and do lean development where customer happens before product, then we sort of focus in on the core experiments. We can get 30 to 40% of the teams to revenue by the end of the weekend. And so that initial framing matters. And that takes me back to that tool question. If we end up spending the weekend arguing about which tool to use, it's useless, right? We lost the whole weekend. And so a little bit of framing and putting a box in place so that we know what we're allowed to do and we can start, take a bite out of something and chew on it and make progress matters. And having at least defined a couple of the tools really can make that work as well, right? And that's some of that short-term framing, which you didn't do, which then led into this discussion part of the thing where people were uncomfortable. And so I want to hear your thoughts on the balance between, how you frame the tool sets and how you frame the goals and how you frame the budgets when you set up this is the project for that team.
Yeah. So in the example, it was actually quite hard to have the full spread of extremely directive to extremely loose, right? I did the extremely loose part when I said just form the teams, and I did extremely directive when I put the titles and the text in that Google Doc and set it to suggestions only. That's like constraining the teams to a point where it becomes extremely uncomfortable. I was actually hoping for somebody to speak up, say, hey, we cannot work like this. Let's move to a different document, right? So I try to show both of these examples. And I think that depending on the timelines you have to reach your goal, like a startup weekend is very different from building an energy company, right? So you need to keep all these things into account to carefully design what boundaries you set for the team. It's very hard. That's my view on it. And I think there's not one solution that fits all the problems. This is something like if you want to be really good at building teams, you need to carefully consider what the constraints should be, where you give the freedoms and where you set the boundaries. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think that there's a layer on top, which is that there's a team that is the management team that is framing the goals of the greater company rather than the smaller pieces. And so that dynamic, I think, is worth diving into. Maybe not today.
I have one deep dive exactly on that topic if there are no further questions, and I can do it in 5 minutes. Just give you a little bit of a hint. Let's see. Sorry. Zoom controls are not helping me. So I need to stop the share for a sec. There we are. It's always difficult to get Zoom to share the screen if it's maxed out. I got the there we go. That's the one I want. So here's a deep dive on the thing that solves this in a different way. So there's different ways to run an organization. You can have a management team that sets the goals and is basically leading the organization and have that led by a CEO, which is a hierarchical pyramid. And you can have a different way that is not hierarchical. They call them flat organizations and such. You might have heard of holacracy. It's an older concept. And a slightly different flavor of that is called sociocracy. And the thing I really like about sociocracy is that it very structurally, with very good recipes, describes how you can run an organization without having a central point of authority, a central decision-making point. There's a really good website on this, Sociocracy 3.0, has all kinds of canvases and worksheets, very clear recipes. And it also relates to a book called Many Voices, One Song. And that describes the whole thing in a very tangible way. You can basically just follow recipes and see if you want to augment them. Sociocracy is most importantly, in my opinion, based on consent. So nobody has to do anything without consenting to have to do it, and nothing gets done to anyone without their consent. It means it is about equivalence. So everybody has in principle, the same rights to influence a decision. But there's also accountability. Somebody needs to mute, I think. There's accountability, there's continuous improvement of the organization, there's transparency of the decision-making processes and the collaboration between teams. They call them circles. There is effectiveness. Several examples have shown that sociocratic organizations can be more effective than their hierarchical equivalent. And there is empiricism, so that means we do experiments and learn from them. All these things are quite well described in the books and the website, Sociocracy 3.0. We follow this at Squads and it works surprisingly well. And that is sort of I would say it's an alternative to the thing you just mentioned before, John, saying there is a management team that sets the goals and directions. In the sociocratic example, goals can be set anywhere in the organization. It's just very strictly defined how different groups of people can organize in circles and can get mandate to set goals on specific topics. So I really recommend also looking into that, because it is in some cases actually a better way of defining an organization. If you need help with that, I'm very, very happy to talk about it more in detail on a specific use case. The other deep dive I will skip. So we have the 10 minutes I promised for Q&A. And if you have other questions or questions that didn't get answered, please repeat them in the chat, and I will be happy to take them now.
Well, I think we have some people who do teams for a living in the form of being project managers or program managers. So I'd love to hear some questions.
Open the chat now.
So, Tayo, are you starting a company?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And you have a team in your company?
No, not yet. I'm looking to build a team. Yeah.
And so from the mantra from my work, we're looking for co-founders in a startup to be management, money, market, and technology. Those four things have to have some kind of control on it, which is leading you to different skills, but trying to do this thing of getting a startup to stand on its own two legs, right? So how are you going to set the culture of this group? And Iwein is presenting a point of view on how to do that, which is distinctly different than what the VCs will tell you to do.
Right, yeah. I'm digesting that a little bit. I think someone already put a question in the thread about how to balance kind of the pressures of delivering a product versus building out a team and letting that team bake. And
how long do you think it takes to bake a team?
well, I think it was mentioned that a lot of teams need more baking time than one kind of project that they work on. So I'm trying to reconcile that in my head a little bit and try to figure out how I can use that in the context where I'm trying to validate ideas and find product market fit. So
let me urge you to stop that product market fit stuff. Because you have not found customer problem fit yet.
Okay.
And you need to go back 3 steps and do the homework so that you actually know what market you're talking about when you get there. So I think Ian and Pavel are in the business of outsourcing that thing, which is different than building a team to do that, right? And so that's where we get into the dating story, right? How are you going to date your co-founders? And what Iwein is suggesting is that you set up opportunities for you to mutually engage in a project together and see how the team forms. Am I putting words in your mouth, Iwein?
A little bit, but I'm not very unhappy about them. Yeah, I think that you've made that point several times before in conversations we've had, John, about the customer problem fit being the first thing. And the question was originally, how much time do you need for the team to bake, right? And so we're talking about a super complicated problem that will change while you work on it, from figuring out what the different fits are to actually building a product and maybe even scaling it up. So the team will always be baking. That's why I'm talking about this iteration. People will leave, people will join, teams will reform while you're at this problem solving work. So I think that what you want to do is spend always at least 30% of the bandwidth on improving the team. Some people even say 70. I've heard a customer say, I want to spend 70% of my budget on just improving the performance of the teams. I think that is quite high, but I can imagine. But you should also always be focused with at least 30% on actually solving the problem, because otherwise, why do you have the team?
So
That's how I see it.
Stephen Covey says, you know, take 10% of your time and work on improvement for whatever. So you're tripling what Stephen Covey says in terms of improvement process, right?
Yeah, anyone that disagrees with that, I would challenge them to measure actually how much time they spend on
How much time?
improvement.
10% is half a day a week.
Yeah, I don't think that's enough. But I think that during the day, every task you pick up, you're also spending a little bit of effort on improving. I think that actually being productive in creative work, if you can do it more than 6 hours a day, you're better than me.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Priscilla asks a question about what kind of due diligence should take place when scouting for founders. And I think maybe the tone of that question is the wrong place to start, because it's trying to protect in a sense. And I would flip it around the other way. How do you know that this is a person who's fun to play with? And if you don't like playing with them on small projects, you're sure not going to like playing with them on large projects. And so I would do lots of little tiny projects that create some meaningful value to someone, but that you can easily walk away at the end of the weekend or the end of the week or the end of the month. And there's no lingering requirement to be with each other. And if you keep doing that over and over again, you're getting a signal. And if you try it and it's kind of meh and you don't really enjoy doing it the next time, that's a useful signal.
I think that's a really great point.
So there's no shortage of little projects out there that you can, you know, create value for someone. Just pick someone who isn't doing something they need to do and put it together for them. Simple, stupid solution, which is good enough for that person that creates value for them, but requires the collaboration to do it well. Like, you know, putting a website up for a school that doesn't have one kind of stuff.
And another thing I think that actually is due diligence is that before you start collaborating with anyone, you need to answer the question, how are we going to part ways if we want to? If you don't have that in order, don't get them on board.
Yeah. And that actually, when you do your startup, Tayo, you need to have a founder's agreement. And the core piece in the founder's agreement is that. How will we disengage when, you know, I get hit by a car and I have a concussion and I can't work for 6 months? How do we disengage when you do something stupid and I can't forgive you? How do we disengage when I really actually have to have money and the doing this for free thing isn't working for me anymore? All of those kinds of things, you should have it written down in an agreement. And not only employment agreements, but founder agreements.
Thanks. I'll
Just one final remark. I'm putting, before everybody has to leave, I'm putting a meeting link in the chat. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free, because I've heard some very interesting things. I haven't answered all the questions, so just so you know.
I don't see a meeting in the chat yet. Oh, there we go.
Right there.
Cool. So if you were doing this team formation, you have succeeded in doing it for your teams in squads. Have you watched other people succeed at doing it for their teams using this idea?
Yes. I've actually taken this idea from a previous company and refined it at squads. But it's always a hard struggle doing it this way in the face of people that really want to command and control and micromanage those teams.
Well,
so it's
but we've all been
back.
trained in college to get the homework assignment and do the homework assignment. So we're predisposed to being told what the box is. So
Exactly.
your effort to get people to grow their own box is admirable, but it's going to take some extra work, right?
Yeah, but it's worth it. That's my point.
Yeah, well, so good. We're definitely out of time. Thank you for coming. We will do more. The squads team has got 2 more things on our calendar. we look forward to diving in a little more detail on some of these things. Thanks so very much.
Thank you, John, for setting it up, and thanks, Ian.
Thank
Let me
you.
say, we do have a Slack channel for people in the Open Coffee, and so you're welcome to join that Open Coffee Slack channel as well.
Would love to.
Let me, yeah, I'll send it out to everyone through the meetup. Right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.